Hey y'all, welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast about all geeky aspects of software delivery, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today is Jacob Aronoff, who is also one of my coworkers. Welcome, Jacob.
Yeah. Hello. I'm very happy to be here. I'm so happy that we get to do this. I feel like we talked about this in Amsterdam, and I'm
I
so
know.
excited that we get to make it happen.
I know, right? Yeah, this is awesome. So, as we start out, I'm gonna do some lightning round questions. They are totally painless, no wrong answers. So, are you ready?
I'm prepared. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right. Are you a lefty or a righty?
I am a righty, though I always thought I was supposed to be a lefty, and my parents forced
Ooh.
me to be a righty.
Yeah, interesting. Soul of a lefty.
Exactly.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone, I just got the new one.
Oh, I'm so
USB-C all the
jealous.
way.
I'm so jealous.
It's
Yeah, I
nice.
know. I'm
It's
super
really
excited about
nice.
the USB-C. I think we're going to wait one more year because I want the iPhone. I don't like the Pro Max; it's too big. But I want the
It's
Pro. But
huge. It's way too
I want
big.
to wait until they upgrade the optical zoom to like whatever the Pro Max
Mm,
offers. Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. Anywho, go on. Okay, Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Mac for sure. Big Mac boy. Whole life.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Okay, favorite programming language?
Um, I feel like Go. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Go. It used to be Swift or Elixir. Those are my two, like a little bit more funky choices. I used to
Yeah.
work in Elixir, and I really loved it. Definitely one of the most fun languages I've had the chance to do. Swift I haven't done for a few years, but there are a lot of little Easter eggs around my like socials that refer to Swift a lot.
That's why your social handle is Get Swifty, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. I get it. I
a
get
lot of
it.
Easter eggs.
Nice, nice. I love
um,
it. I
I
love it.
hold the. I hold the. Still, I was the first person to ever write a Datadog SDK in Swift, and it's
Really?
still on their website.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Very nice. Very nice. Cool. Okay, next question. Dev or ops?
Oof. That's a really hard one. Dev. I'm just gonna say dev.
All right.
Ops is fun, but you're still doing dev if you're doing ops. Like
Interesting.
you're still deving. You're still deving.
I like it.
It's
Yeah,
just
especially modern ops, right? I mean, maybe not
yeah,
well, even bash scripting back in the day, right? Like
still
when ops
counts.
was still more bashy, less like terraformy.
Yeah, back when ops was like mostly just like Jenkins scripting with Bash, like that's still dev. There's still a
Yeah.
lot of dev stuff in there. Um, so it's always been like that. It's just new abstractions.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. That's a really good point. I like it. Okay, next question. JSON or YAML?
Oh, man, YAML. It's just I'm a YAML engineer. I can't deny it.
Yeah, I like YAML better. No disrespect to the JSON people out there, but I don't get it. YAML
I don't
forces
even
me to
touch it.
do indentations, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, cool, cool. Okay, two more questions. Do you prefer to consume content through video or text?
Ooh, probably text. I love to read like really long form things, especially. Um, I I don't know. I save a bunch of articles whenever I see them, and they'll be like 10-minute, 20-minute reads. And
Yeah,
whenever I
yeah.
have like some real free time, then I'll go through one or two of them, and that is like my
Nice,
favorite
nice.
way to consume. I probably consume more video realistically,
Oh,
but
really?
yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, like how to type things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but um, I love to read more than I love to watch. Watching is too passive. I get too distracted.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's what I find like annoying about watching videos. Like someone sends me a video link, I'm like, it better be like some short video. So if it's like an Instagram video or YouTube short, it's fine. But like, send me a 5-minute video. I'm like, I'm never gonna watch it. Even if you tell me it's like the most wonderful
Yeah.
thing in the world, I'm not gonna watch it. I'm so sorry.
Or it's like even if you watch it, you get so distracted by another thing. It's
Yeah,
just like I don't even, I don't know. So
yeah.
I feel that. I feel that.
Yeah, I think the only way I can consume quote unquote a YouTube video is if it's audio only, so I'm like just, doing chores around the house and
Mm,
listening to it, then it's
yeah.
okay, right? Because my brain is like it helps me focus better.
Mm, I feel that. I mean, it's basically you're just podcasting at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, I love me a good podcast, so
Yeah.
next. Okay, final question. What is your superpower?
Oh, superpower. I have a useless superpower. Um,
Ooh.
it's I can do a noise. Like I can make a noise that's really like a click. I can click with my tongue really loudly.
Okay, now you
Um,
have to demonstrate.
I will, but it might disturb some people in this office. Okay.
Damn.
I don't know if that came through,
That I
but
mean, it came through okay over here. So
it's really
cool.
loud. It's like, and
That's like
that was
some
like a quieter one.
echolocation.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love
um,
it. I love it.
yeah. It's useful when it's like I need to get someone's attention who knows that I can do that, and then I'll do the
Yeah,
click,
yeah, yeah.
and then they'll like be like, "Oh, there he is."
Nice, nice. I like
Yeah.
that. Cool. All right, now we're getting to we shall get to the meaty bits, which is
Sweet.
let's talk OTel.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. Yeah, so I guess for starters, you're involved as part of So we both work at Lightstep, which I guess is now no wait, ServiceNow Cloud Observability, uh, and I guess you and I met because we both work in the OTel space, although we work in different areas of the OTel space. Why don't you tell folks like what you do specifically around OTel?
Yeah. So I sort of got started with OTel 2 years ago when I joined the company, working on the OTel Kubernetes story and like what's going on there, basically. Um, I came from a Prometheus shop that really heavily invested in Prometheus, and I had sort of seen the great stuff with Prometheus and then some of the struggles with Prometheus. And I came in and I was like, well, I now work on top of a metrics backend. What's the best way to get metrics there? Um, OTel has the OTLP format. And so I wanted to figure out the best way to get Prometheus metrics into the OTLP format and then into our backend, specifically in Kubernetes, and like what is the best way to do that. So I sort of began this journey on the operator group, which is a SIG within OTel that works on a piece of OTel code that sits within your Kubernetes cluster within your environment, to make it really easy to deploy OTel collectors and do auto instrumentation and things like that. And then the feature I was working on was to make it so that you could really easily scrape and scale metrics collection. So that was sort of my first foray into it. And then I started contributing a lot. I became a maintainer for the project. And now I just sort of work on OTel Kubernetes stuff all the time. So thinking about new features, new ways to help users, run their whole environment for telemetry collection in Kubernetes. That's really the focus. Like, how
That's
do we make
awesome.
that as easy as possible for people?
Yeah.
There's definitely like a lot to be done, but it's a really great group of people that I think pretty deeply about this stuff and are very good at like sharing and caring and not very what's the word nobody's really holding on to Legos. Have you heard that
Yeah,
phrase? Is
yeah.
that like a known phrase? Yeah, it's
I
like
haven't heard that.
nobody's.
I hadn't heard that expression before, but I like it.
It's like nobody's. Everybody's happy to like share. There's not really someone
Nice, nice.
who's particularly
Like
unwilling
hoarding
to accept
something.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nothing like that. It's like
Cool.
it's really based on like the merit of the feature, not
Yeah,
the fact that you don't get to do it.
nice.
So it's
I
a good
really like
group as a result.
I really
Yeah.
like that, and I can vouch for that too because I've bugged you with a bunch of questions around the operator when I was like trying to understand it better, and I've also posed questions to the operator Slack channel, and like people have just generally been really nice about answering my questions, which is awesome because I think definitely like tech has, I would say this I'm sure it still exists, but like you see Stack Overflows where people ask questions and then you get like some
Well,
high and mighty asshole who's like
yeah.
putting you down because like you're a novice to the subject and you're just trying to understand it, and I get none of that from the OTel community, which I love because then it makes me unafraid to ask questions, and so it makes it easier to learn.
Yeah, and a thing that I try to make sure of, at least with our group, is for anybody who's like a new contributor, I try to go really out of my way to thank them for their contribution and make sure that they're sort of like set up for success with what they're doing. Like even today,
Yeah.
um, someone was asking some questions on our GitHub about this, some operator features. I gave them their answers, and they said, if you have more questions, like reach out in our Slack. Happy to follow up there. And so they followed up, asked some more questions. They asked for a feature that we didn't have. I was like, oh, if you make an issue for that, we can get that, on the books. It's not that hard. And then I was like, hey, this is actually a really easy feature. If you wanted to contribute it, I can walk you through, that process. I can show you an example of like, here's an example that you can look at for someone who did something similar in the past. And let me know if you have any questions. And that's what they're going to go do now. They're going to make their first contribution. So
Yeah.
it's something that I'm really happy to see, as not just with my group, but like all of the groups. People are really happy to walk you through contributions and make sure that you're like supported. And if there's a feature that you want, people will actually take you seriously. They respond to you with sincerity, not what's the other word? They
Hostility.
respond to you with, yeah, perfect. They respond to you with sincerity, not hostility. And so there are no questions that you could ask that I've seen where someone's going to really get angry at you for asking that question. And I think that that's like a really nice thing. It's good to see a humble bunch and not like a really, egotistical bunch.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, and I think I think that's why like people keep contributing to OpenTelemetry, which is great.
Yeah.
Now, as a follow up question, so well, related to OpenTelemetry, we had you on for the OTel end user working group for two sessions. So first for our Q&A session and our OTel in practice, which we host those two sessions on a monthly basis. And you had a really cool story actually about migrating to OTel within the context of like an observability company migrating itself to OTel. And why don't you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that? I think it's so cool.
Yeah. So previously, our company was on, before we had a metrics platform, we were on StatsD. Like all of our metrics were recorded via StatsD. Sometimes we would rewrite them into traces, which was pretty weird.
Wow.
Or we would have them go through a proxy so that we could like aggregate them in some way and
Mhm.
get some information out of them. So we were previously on the StatsD, and then we were also on a really old version of OpenTracing. Before, this was before the OpenTracing and OpenCensus projects merged into OpenTelemetry.
Mhm.
And so we were on that old OpenTracing version. And so I took on this work to migrate us to OpenTelemetry for everything. Well, metrics and traces, logs, support is still, in the works. But that's the next migration. But so I started this project for migrating our metrics to OpenTelemetry, at which point the metrics SDK was still in beta, or the metrics API was still in beta. The SDK was in alpha. And so the goal was to really help the people on the OTel side, iterate on their designs, work on performance, and really, tighten up that spec. So I did that, and then I actually found a bug in maybe not a bug, a performance issue in the metrics code, which was a result of us having to convert from the new OTel format for attributes into the old other way around, to convert from the OpenTracing attributes format to the OpenTelemetry attributes format. The reason this was a problem was because we shared this implementation between our tracing and metrics. And it meant that every time we recorded a metric, we had to do this conversion on the fly. And, it doesn't sound that bad on a, individual basis, but when you're recording, hundreds of thousands, millions of metric points, that's a lot of conversions. And that type of thing can really add up.
Totally.
And so after I gave some of this performance feedback to the team, I actually realized that, we could do this OpenTelemetry migration for tracing as well, which would then get rid of this performance concern. And so in the midst of the metrics migration, I took a pause, and then we began the tracing migration. The tracing migration was much easier because it was a more mature format at the time. So that process was a bit smoother. There were a few weird things here and there. You can read about that, I think, online somewhere that we have documented, maybe. I think there's some blog posts.
Plus, we have the recording from your OTel in practice.
Yeah,
we do. OTel Q&A discussion as well. So.
Yeah, but so cool. Thanks. But so we finished that migration. Then we went back to the metrics migration. We got to use that performance benefit, and the OTel people actually worked on a lot of the performance recommendations that we made. So we were able to finish the metrics migration as well. Mm-hmm. And so it was really neat because I love these types of migrations because you're really just you'll see the phrase a lot, replacing the engine of a flying plane. Mm-hmm. It's doing that in place. And that's really what it feels like sometimes when you're dealing with, hundreds of thousands of data points per second. How do you, replace your telemetry collection about that? That's a pretty challenging thing for any company, not just us. But then when you're the vendor serving the metrics, it's who's watching the watcher, that type of thing. So really the most difficult part is just reorienting your brain to think about the environments correctly, to be sure that when you're talking about, environment A, you are sure that that's where the data should be and not somewhere else, right? Because for most of these telemetry vendors, whether it's us or Datadog or New Relic, it doesn't really matter. All of them have a meta telemetry environment that's sort of the secondary place that they send the telemetry of their main environment to. So that's the thing that that's the thing that you're monitoring. And that's what lets you do these migrations effectively as well.
Yeah. So here's a question, because this is actually a really cool use case because when we talk about bringing in OpenTelemetry to an organization, if you're lucky and you're starting out your application from scratch, you have the luxury of factoring observability into your architecture, right? And so you can start instrumenting in OpenTelemetry right off the bat, hopefully, right? One can dream. But then you also have the so-called brownfield scenarios, right? Where it's brownfield, I have zero instrumentation. Mm-hmm. And then there's the brownfield of I have instrumentation, but it's out of date. And I think
Hmm.
that's something, or not out of date, but it's like it's not up to date with a standard, right? Which now, like the standard being OpenTelemetry. And so those are two really interesting conversations to have, because I think a lot of the organizations that are adopting OpenTelemetry probably fall into one of those two categories. And from talking to a lot of folks, it's interesting too, because like you have this conversation of like, you start telling them, oh yeah, I work in OpenTelemetry. Oh yeah, OpenTracing, we use that. And I'm like, no, it's not the same.
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
And so it's like you're having to educate them on that. And but folks are also like, even if you get them like sold on like, okay, open telemetry is the thing, you gotta now like talk about like a strategy for bringing that into the organization. And that can be very tricky. I mean, where we're at, it was an easy sell, because it's like, well, this is
Yeah, like,
what
well,
we do.
yeah, this is what we do. This is what we work on. We should
And
be doing it ourselves. Yeah.
exactly. So that's not even the problem. But even with that easy, I'll say easy, right, because you're not having to deal with that hurdle. You have the hurdle of like, well, I've got some existing stuff now that I have to migrate. So one thing I'm wondering is like, as you mentioned, there was like some old open tracing stuff in place, and one of the things about open telemetry is that they say like they're backwards compatible with open tracing, open census. Now, which from my understanding means that if you have that stuff in place, like you don't have to gut it right away. However, you probably don't want it to stay that way forever. So what do you say to folks like who are in that position?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a real, it's a benefit that OTel provides these bridges to these like legacy formats so that you can start using OTel and then get all of that in place. Um, the thing that I always think about whenever doing these migrations, whether it's like a service, your telemetry, it doesn't really matter. The question is like, how long do you want to be in a dual state? How long do you want to be in a state where you're potentially confusing someone on call? It's like the real
Mm-hmm.
crux of the issue is it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
always imagine yourself on call for whatever service you're changing and someone gets paged at like 3 a.m. Do you really want someone to have to reason about where your telemetry is coming from or like how it's getting generated? Like you don't. Like you really want that to
yeah,
be consistent. Like you don't want to have to ask the question, oh, is this like an open tracing thing? Is this an OTel thing? I mean, in the same way that's like if you're migrating a service and you have legacy service and new service, if you're in the dual state for a long time and you get a page for, an upstream thing that's related to both of these downstream services, you don't want to have to like it's really frustrating to have to ask the question, which of these downstream things is affecting me, right?
yeah,
It'd be
yeah,
much easier if it was just, I look at the single downstream and I know that that's the problem.
yeah,
Any more, basically, it's shaving the decision tree for this
yeah, yeah,
that you're
yeah,
doing. And so anything that you can do to remove the amount of time that you're in that dual state when like, removing those branches is going to do you better in the long run. The migration path is good that you can do this. There's another path which I also think is a great option where the OTel collector probably supports whatever format you have right now. I'd be surprised if it doesn't.
yeah,
What you
yeah,
could do is just send, rather than installing a bridge into your code, you could just send your legacy format to the collector and have the collector output OTLP,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then you can change your application to use OTel in whatever time frame you want, and then just have that sent to the collector, which already accepts OTLP,
yeah,
right? And so that'll help you actually verify that like the migration worked, right? You're already
yeah,
getting OTLP. You don't have to do anything with that. And then once you start sending OTLP from your application, you should see no difference in what's
yeah,
emitted, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and that's a pretty verifiable thing. Like you could actually even use the like file exporter on the OTel collector to actually
Mhm.
dump the data that you get. And then for service A, run it with, Jaeger
Yeah.
for 10 minutes, dump that data
Yeah.
with the OTLP out. And then do service A again, but with OTLP, dump that data for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then just see what it looks like. Understand that you should see like a pretty minimal difference between those two
Right. Right.
things,
Right.
right? And that type of thing can give you so much confidence, and you can do that probably from your local environment without
Yeah.
even needing to like push it up. And so that's something that we didn't really consider as an option at the time, but had we thought of that, I definitely would have done it that way. It would have been a great option
Yeah.
where we
Yeah.
could have just moved to OTel instantly and
Yeah.
then backfill. Right. That's like a much
Yeah.
easier path.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a very low friction approach, and especially like, if like at my old company, they were using OpenTracing in a few spots, and so the mention of like moving to OTel kind of sent people in a panic, like we have to re-instrument. Yes, you do, but hopefully never again after. But that
Yeah.
idea sent people in a panic, and I had the same thought as you, which was like, yeah, just pump it through the collector. Like you don't have to change your code right away, but with the intention of eventually changing your code, because now correct me if I'm wrong, but if you continue on open tracing, you don't get to reap the benefits that you get with the whole OTel ecosystem, right? I mean, you don't end up with the traces and metrics correlation and the traces and logs correlation and or any like new updates to the API or SDK, right? You're kind of stuck with whatever open tracing was when it froze, like when it was retired, basically.
Yeah. Which means if there are any CVEs, you're kind of like, out of luck, which is
Yeah,
a bad state to be in.
totally,
It's a
totally.
really bad state to be in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So awesome. Yeah, I definitely like that. Now, going back to the OTel operator. So you said that you're doing mostly work around like the metrics portion. It's the target allocator specifically, right? That you do
Yeah,
work
that's
with.
exactly right.
Yeah. So
Now it's a
explain.
bit more than that.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but back then, like last year, was basically all target allocator stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. So
Um,
yeah, can you
I can
explain
explain
like?
it.
Yeah. 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 That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
So basically, when we started this process, someone from AWS had designed this thing called the target allocator. The goal of it was that you could distribute. Prometheus works in targets. Targets are things that are like IP addresses, right? Like a pod, a node, your old EC2 instance, whatever it is. You then go and scrape that instance to generate metrics. Prometheus works where it's a single monolith, and you have a list of targets, and it scrapes those and stores that data. You have to do this because if you have more than one instance of Prometheus, there's no way to tell which instance should scrape which thing, and so you're just going to be duplicating those scrapes. With OTel, we have the benefit of we don't need to store those metrics because we're just handing them off to the next thing with OTLP.
Mhm.
So the target allocator's goal is to allow you to distribute those targets amongst a pool of collectors.
Mhm.
So if you have, 300 targets and you have 3 collectors, the target allocator could say, I'm going to give each collector 100 targets evenly, right?
Mhm.
So
But you need to
that's
have
its
like
goal.
100 collectors then to send it to. Is that what that means?
No, you would just have to have. Sorry, you would have if you have 300 targets and you have
Mhm.
3 collectors, then it's 100
Yeah.
targets per collector, and then you would
Oh, I
just forward that to your destination. So it'd be
oh,
like,
got it.
if your destination is Prometheus actually, which now accepts OTLP, you could
Mhm.
have OTel do all of your scraping and then just send the data to Prometheus as your backend store, right? And that would be like a totally viable option now.
Gotcha.
If you
Gotcha.
really wanted like the ability to shard your scraping and scale how you scrape targets, like that
Yeah.
would be a pretty viable approach.
Right. Which Prometheus doesn't support the sharding right now, right?
So Prometheus has experimental sharding support,
Oh, okay.
but it doesn't have the ability. So it can shard your scraping, but it can't figure out your querying effectively. So because Prometheus is also a database,
Hmm.
if you have 3 instances of Prometheus that are scraping each different targets, you'll only be able to query. Uh, you'll have to query the right instance each time because it
Oh,
doesn't know how to do that communication to
gotcha.
ask for who has this metric. At least that's my understanding of it. Maybe they've
Okay.
changed that, but I don't think they have.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting. And so this allows you to scrape the Prometheus metrics, which are not, I mean, basically you're scraping it from wherever your source of Prometheus metrics is, right? It can be whatever. It can be coming from your
Yeah.
infrastructure or whatever. And then
Mm-hmm.
this thing basically does the sharding for you, and then it'll send your metrics to a destination. The destination could be Prometheus itself, or it
Mm-hmm.
could be any observability backend that supports metrics, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And that's the real benefit. I mean, we also open up by using the target allocator, we can be a little bit smarter as well. So the thing that Prometheus does, because it's all in one, is most of the targets that you get, you're just going to drop. The way that
Mhm.
the scrape configs work is you get a target which has a bunch of metadata, and then your
Mhm.
scrape config determines whether or not you should actually get the data from that target,
Got it.
even prior to making the request.
Okay.
And so usually you have to keep all of those in memory because you're
Mhm.
constantly scraping them, right? And you're constantly asking this question: does the metadata match my scrape config? Does the metadata match my scrape config? And so forth. Whereas because we have the target allocator, we can
Yeah.
actually just drop any targets that we know the collector won't scrape
Okay.
in advance. So we only tell the collector to process targets that it will end up scraping.
Okay. So it's like a filter.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Nice.
That's what we call it in the we call it a relabel filter.
Oh, okay.
Um, so the real reason that this is really cool and why we added this in is because then we can also really evenly distribute targets to collectors,
Mhm.
because we can say only, so if you have 300 targets, we use this strategy called consistent hashing, where you just hash each target and their metadata um, to assign that to a collector ID. And so if you have, like, let's say 500 targets, but you really are only going to end up scraping 100 of them after this filter, it would be better if you only tell the collectors, if you only like distribute the targets that you're going to end up scraping,
Yeah.
because it's going to be more even. It's like,
Yeah.
rather than trying to fit in 500, it's the pigeonhole principle, right? It's
Yeah.
like if
Yeah.
you have 3 boxes and you have 500 um, targets, you might evenly distribute it at first,
Yeah.
but eventually when you go to scrape them, it might be uneven once you figure out what you're actually going to scrape,
Right.
right?
Right. So by the time the collector's receiving them, you've already just gotten the ones that you want, and so it can give you an even distribution of those. So then you're not
Yeah,
like there isn't an imbalance, basically.
yeah, exactly,
Nice, nice.
exactly.
That is super cool.
It's
Ah,
very
learn something
clever.
new every day.
Yeah.
That's very awesome. So, is the target allocator only part of the OTel operator? Is that something that's available as part of like the collector standalone collector?
So the target allocator is its own image, like it runs separate from the collector binary.
Oh, okay.
Um, you could theoretically run it like without the operator. There are
Uh-huh.
definitely some people that do that, but we don't really have we don't support that as like first class support.
Mm.
The reason why is that we do a lot of logic to rewrite in order to make this work. You have to
Mm-hmm.
rewrite the collector's configuration, and you also have to rewrite the target allocator's configuration. It's just a bit of like data munging,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't want users to have to do, just because it's a
Yeah.
little bit complicated. So we do it in the operator for you.
Yeah.
Um, there are people who will take what the operator gives you,
Yeah.
remove the operator, and then just run it themselves.
Right.
And that's like kind of a viable option,
Yeah.
but it's, that's bespoke. You'd have to do that. You'd have to do that yourself. And I'm not going to, if you ask me a bunch of questions, I'll try to help you. But like, there's a certain point at which, I can't help you because it's your config, right? Like,
Damn.
I don't know what you're doing.
That sounds like someone's idea of like a fun weekend project.
So we have a bunch of requests from people to enable the target allocator as part of the Helm chart, the like
interesting
raw collector Helm chart. And I tried to do it, and it was so hard. It just proved so difficult to like do the config rewriting. Was like so challenging.
Damn.
Because Helm isn't really a language. It gives you some Go templating stuff, and you can do a lot with it. But at a certain point, it doesn't get you all the way there.
Right.
And so I wasn't able to make it work, and I eventually decided to give up because it was too much of a time sink.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Which is unfortunate because people ask for it a lot. So
yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
But, yeah.
Now, do you think, because I mean, obviously there's an OTel operator because obviously a lot of people run the collector in Kubernetes. Do you know, is it common for people to run collectors outside of Kubernetes? I mean, obviously, if you're not a Kubernetes shop, I would imagine that would be the use case. But how common is it? Do you know,
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are a bunch of people that do it. Because I'm, in my little Kubernetes world, I don't hear about it that often.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm pretty isolated. But there are definitely people who just run collectors as binaries on raw EC2 instances or, GCS instances. Like, people are doing it for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. They probably have a whole different class of problems than the ones I deal with.
I'll bet. I know we're coming up on time, but I wanted to ask you quickly because, by the time this episode comes out, I don't know if KubeCon will have passed, but all the same. But do you have anything coming up at KubeCon that you want to talk about?
I do indeed. So one of the main projects I'm doing for the operator right now is adding support for the OpAMP protocol, which is a new part of OpenTelemetry that gives users the ability to do remote configuration management and agent configuration and observability, like sort of with superpowers. And I'll be giving a talk with Andy Keller from ObserveIQ on OpAMP and how it's going to make your life a lot easier to manage these pools of collectors that you have. So I am working on this project in the operator group that will allow you to basically understand the topology of your collectors in your Kubernetes cluster and also remotely configure them, add in new features, push out updates, everything that basically allow your cluster's observability to be on autopilot for you.
Nice. Who doesn't love that?
Right?
Very cool.
Stop thinking about it.
Is that part of Observability Day, or is that part of the KubeCon, the main conference?
Main conference.
Nice.
Very nice. Yeah,
that's very cool.
I don't know how many how many people can fit in the room that I'm in, though. I thought they'd tell you that, but I guess they don't.
It'll be a surprise the day of.
It will. It'll be anywhere from 5 people to 500 people.
I'm always nervous for these types of things, because I think on the KubeCon schedule, you can see, people already will sign up for your talk, and and you start seeing people signing up to attend your talk, and if it's like a small number, you're like, oh my god, and if it's a large number, you're also like, oh my god.
Yeah, I know.
Damned if you
I'm
do,
very
damned if you don't.
nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, KubeCon is a
Trying to
big
find it.
it is like a very big deal. So but yeah, this is awesome. Very excited for your talk.
Thank you.
Oh, the other thing that I wanted to mention, also, I don't know if it's going to come out by the time this comes out, but I do want to promote it because you were on the Maintainable podcast, right? You recorded an
Was
episode recently.
I did indeed. I don't
Yeah,
think that's out yet, but
but something to look out for. So
definitely something to look out for. Though I have no idea when that'll be out.
we will find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I recorded an episode, I want to say like in the spring, and it came out a couple months later. So probably
Yeah.
some.
There's a backlog of editing, and
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's a whole
I
process.
feel that like I have a backlog of editing for this too. So
Yeah. That's just how it happens.
yeah, totally. But anyway, something to look forward to as well.
Hmm.
So y'all keep an eye out for that. Now, before we part ways, do you have any interesting pieces of advice? What be it like in tech or OTel or whatever, or any hot takes that you wanted to share with folks?
I think the thing that I always say is just do something that you enjoy if you're looking for a job. Just like
Yeah,
find something that work on a project that you enjoy. Find something that's weird and fun and doesn't really matter and just brings you some joy. I think that we all sort of forget that coding can be really fun and enjoyable, and it's like there's so many things out there that are so cool right now, especially, and there's so many things that I think have been forgotten, um, just like out of the consciousness. Like I used to do a lot of coding with like SignalFX and Java to do like UI building and like games and stuff, and I haven't done that in so long. But like that was I had so much fun doing that. So if you're looking for a job and you don't know how to do it, my best advice is to do a project that you find very fun and interesting and not just one that you think will play well on a resume. Because if I'm interviewing you and you tell me about a project that you were like so happy to do and were really excited about, that's going to be 10 times better than a project that you didn't really care about. So
yeah.
just have fun is my advice.
Yeah, that is really, really great advice, and I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and coding should be fun. It definitely puts me in a happy place when I'm working on an exciting project that I dream up some weird like thing that I want to explore, and then you
Yeah,
learn so much, and I don't know, it's like you get a high, the programmer's high
yeah,
from solving cool
exactly.
problems. Totally down for that. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Jacob, for joining today. So, y'all don't forget to subscribe. Be sure to check the show notes for additional resources and to connect with us with our guests on social media. Until next time.
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Villela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout.